Imagine this, it's Christmas Eve, the air thick with the scent of pine needles and flickering candlelight dancing across walls adorned with mismatched ornaments from decades past. You're a kid, wide-eyed and buzzing with that electric anticipation that only the holidays can summon, huddled in a cozy living room where the adults are whispering secrets and the fire crackles like it's in on the joke. But then, something utterly bizarre catches your eye, a wooden log, rough-hewn and unassuming, propped up like a reluctant guest on a blanket in the corner. It's not just any log, no, this one's got a face crudely painted on, eyes wide with mock surprise, and it's staring right back at you as if it knows the absurdity about to unfold. In our family, this wasn't some random decoration pulled from the attic, it was the star of the show, the pooping log, a tradition borrowed from far-off Catalan roots that my parents had stubbornly woven into our American-Brazilian holiday tapestry, turning what should have been a night of quiet reverence into a whirlwind of laughter, embarrassment, and those raw, unspoken bonds that only family can forge. I remember the first time I laid eyes on it, my small hands clutching a mug of hot cocoa that was starting to go cold, because nothing prepares a child for the sight of grown-ups chanting and poking at a piece of wood, urging it to, well, you know, do its business, and cough up gifts hidden inside. It was equal parts hilarious and mortifying, like stumbling upon a secret society ritual where the punchline involves nature's most unglamorous act, all wrapped in the glow of holiday cheer. As the years blurred by, that log became more than a quirky prop, it was a mirror reflecting our family's quirks, the way my dad's booming laugh could cut through any awkward silence, my mom's gentle prodding to keep the magic alive even when life chipped away at the edges, and us kids, caught between giggling fits and the dawning realization that traditions like this weren't just silly, they were lifelines tethering us to joy amid the chaos of growing up. Picture the scene, snow dusting the windows outside, but inside, the warmth builds not from the heater, but from the shared absurdity, the way relatives from both sides of the ocean would pile in, accents mingling like spices in a stew, everyone pretending this log was the most normal thing in the world. Yet, beneath the surface silliness, there was always this undercurrent, a whisper of deeper emotions, the fleeting innocence of childhood, the stubborn persistence of love in the face of change, and how something so ridiculous could etch memories that stick with you long after the wrapping papers cleared away. That night, as the clock ticked toward midnight, I felt it stirring, that mix of curiosity and unease, wondering what secrets this log held, not just in its hollow belly, but in the way it forced us all to let go, to embrace the imperfect, the vulnerable, and laugh at the messiness of being human. It was the start of something that would unravel family threads I didn't even know were tangled, pulling me into a story that's equal parts nostalgic haze and sharp, poignant truth, reminding me why we cling to these bizarre rituals. They're the glue that holds the heart of Christmas together, even when it feels like everything else is falling apart. And as we gather round, year after year, the log sits there, a silent witness to it all, promising not just gifts, but glimpses into the souls we share under the holiday lights. But wait, there's more to this tale than the initial shock. It's about the build-up, the midnight frenzy, the quiet revelations that follow, and how one weird wooden figure can teach you about loss, laughter, and the enduring power of family ties that no amount of time can snap. Let me take you back, deeper into that evening, where the air hummed with anticipation, and the log's impending performance set the stage for emotions we never saw coming. The house was alive with the clatter of plates from the kitchen, where aunts and uncles debated recipes passed down like heirlooms, feijoada mingling with paella, a cultural mashup that mirrored the log itself. I remember sneaking peeks at my parents, their faces flushed with secretive excitement, wrapping small treasures in tissue paper and stuffing them into the log's belly earlier that day, their whispers laced with inside jokes that made me itch with curiosity. Why a log? Why the pooping? It was my dad's idea, he said, a nod to his Catalan grandmother's stories of cagatío, that magical Yule log back in Spain that children beat with sticks to coax out sweets and figs. But here, in our suburban home halfway across the world, it morphed into something uniquely ours, bigger, bolder, with a painted grin that seemed to wink at our hybrid heritage. As evening fell, the relatives arrived in waves, coats shedding snowflakes, hugs wrapping around like warm scarves. There was Tio Carlos from Brazil, with his tales of endless summer Christmases on the beach, clashing hilariously with the log's wintry origins, and Tia Maria, who brought her own twist by baking cookies shaped like little logs, complete with chocolate surprises. The room filled with chatter, the kind that bounces off walls like popcorn, stories overlapping about past holidays, the one where the tree toppled, or the year Uncle João tried caroling in Portuguese and scared the neighbors. But all eyes kept drifting to the log, blanketed and waiting, like a sleeping dragon about to awaken. I felt that pull, the magnetic draw of the unknown, my siblings exchanging glances that said, "What fresh weirdness is this?" And as the clock hands crept forward, The adults began the ritual's prelude, soft songs in a mishmash of languages, sticks fashioned from broomsticks handed out like wands. It was then that the embarrassment crept in, that hot flush on my cheeks as I realized we'd all be participating, prodding this inanimate object while singing nonsense about it, pooping goodies. Yet, in that hesitation, there was a spark of connection, a shared vulnerability that bridged our differences, making the bazaar feel almost sacred. This wasn't just play, it was a deliberate dive into joy's underbelly, where laughter masks the deeper aches of separation, of miles between homelands, of the quiet fears that holidays amplify. As the song swelled, I caught my dad's eye, that twinkle-promising adventure, and for a moment, the log wasn't funny or odd, it was a vessel for all we held dear, a quirky guardian of our clan's spirit. And just like that, the hook was set, reeling me into a night that would redefine what Christmas meant, not through perfection, but through the glorious mess of it all. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney, and the world outside faded, leaving only us, the log, and the magic about to burst forth in ways no one could predict. It was the kind of evening that lingers in your bones, whispering that true holidays aren't found in glossy cards or store-bought cheer, but in these homemade absurdities that bind us, heart to heart, through every awkward, unforgettable beat. So, lean in closer, because this story's just beginning, the discovery, the unveiling, the chaos and calm that follow, each layer peeling back to reveal the profound beauty hidden in the poop of a log, if you'll pardon the pun. Dear viewer, make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. Sometimes subscriptions can be automatically cancelled, so it's always good to double-check. While you're at it, consider becoming a channel member. As a member, you'll enjoy amazing perks like watching our content ad-free. You can also support our work by sending a thanks. Your contribution helps us invest in better tools and improve the quality of our productions. Join us on this journey and become part of our community. Oh, and let us know in the comments which city you're listening from and what time it is there right now. Let's rewind to that very first encounter, shall we? I must have been about 7 or 8, old enough to sense the magic in the air but young enough that the world still felt like a giant playground of secrets waiting to be uncovered. It was the day before Christmas Eve, and our house, this modest 2-story place on the edge of a sleepy suburb, where the snow piled up like forgotten dreams on the lawn, was already buzzing with that frantic holiday energy that turns ordinary folks into whirlwind decorators. Mom had been up since dawn, stringing lights along the mantel with a precision that bordered on obsession, her hands dusted in glitter from the crafts she'd been making with my little sister. The scent of cinnamon and cloves wafted from the kitchen, where a pot of mulled wine simmered on the stove, its steam curling up like mischievous spirits, mixing with the sharper tang of pine from the tree we'd chopped down ourselves that weekend at a local farm. Dad, ever the storyteller, had regaled us with tales of his childhood in Catalonia during the drive home, his accent thickening as he described snowy mountains and ancient rituals that sounded more like fairy tales than real life. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I stumbled upon in the garage that afternoon, peeking through the half-open door while chasing our tabby cat who darted out for a sniff of the cold. There it was, leaning against a workbench cluttered with tools and half-finished projects, the log. Not some polished trophy from a craft store, mind you, but a rugged chunk of oak, maybe 2 feet long, its bark still rough in places, like it had been yanked straight from the forest floor. Dad had sanded one end smooth, but the other was hollowed out crudely, a dark cavity that gaped like a surprised mouth. And the face, oh, the face he was painting on it with those old brushes from his art supply box. 2 black dots for eyes, wide and startled, a curved line for a nose, and a grin slashed in red, as if the thing was in on some cosmic joke. I froze there in the doorway, my socked feet cold against the concrete floor, heart pounding a little because this wasn't tinsel or a Santa figurine, this was alive? Or at least pretending to be. What in the world is that? I blurted out, my voice echoing a bit too loudly in the dim space lit only by a single bulb swinging overhead. Dad jumped, nearly knocking over a can of varnish, then let out that deep, rumbling laugh of his, the one that always made his mustache twitch. "Ah, mi hijo, you found our little friend," he said, wiping paint from his hands on his jeans. "This is Kagatillo. The pooping log. Don't tell your mother I let you see it early, it's supposed to be a surprise." Pooping log? The words hung in the air like smoke from the chimney, absurd and impossible, making my cheeks burn even in the chill of the garage. I circled it slowly, reaching out a tentative finger to touch the wood, feeling its cool, grainy texture under my skin, like petting a sleeping animal that might wake up any second. Dad explained in hushed tones, as if sharing state secrets, how in his grandmother's village back in Spain, families would drag a similar log inside on Christmas Eve, feed it treats like nuts and dried fruits, and cover it with a blanket to keep it warm. Then, on the big night, the kids would sing songs and whack it gently with sticks until it pooped out small gifts, candies, coins, little toys, hidden inside. It was a way to blend the old pagan fires of winter with the Christian joy of the season, he said, eyes sparkling with that faraway look he got when nostalgia tugged at him. But here, in our home where Brazilian rhythms met American jingles, we'd adapted it, no real treats for the log, just our own stash of surprises wrapped in colorful paper, stuffed in by hand. I could picture it already, Mom's careful fingers folding notes with riddles or tiny trinkets from her jewelry box, Dad sneaking in a whoopee cushion for a laugh. Yet, as he shooed me back inside with a wink and a promise of more details later, confusion swirled in my gut like the hot chocolate I'd sip by the fire. Why this? Why not just hang stockings or bake cookies like everyone else on the block? The rest of the day blurred into a haze of preparations that only heightened the mystery. I helped string popcorn garlands on the tree, my mind wandering back to that painted face, those eyes that seemed to follow me even from the garage's shadows. My siblings were oblivious, my older brother buried in a comic book by the radiator, my sister napping with her thumb in her mouth, but I couldn't shake it, this itch of intrigue mixed with a dash of dread. What if it really pooped? What if the neighbors heard the fuss and thought we were nuts? Dinner that night was a prelude to the weirdness, with Dad's extended family trickling in early, aunts from Brazil via phone calls that crackled with static, uncles bearing bottles of cachaca disguised as holiday spirits. The table groaned under platters of roasted turkey slick with herbs, plantains fried golden from Mom's recipe, and that Catalan twist Dad insisted on, a big bowl of escudella stew, rich and hearty, steaming up the windows. Laughter bounced around as stories flowed, Tio Pedro recounting how he'd once smuggled a live turkey across borders as a kid, Tia Elena teasing about the year the power went out mid-caroling. But every so often, glances darted toward the garage door, where the log waited, blanketed now in my old baby quilt, its edges peeking out like a hidden treasure. As night deepened, the house settled into that quiet hum before the storm. I lay in bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling, the wind rattling the panes like impatient fingers. Sleep evaded me, replaced by visions of that log coming to life, rumbling and shaking under the blanket, spilling forth not just gifts but secrets, the kind families keep tucked away, like Dad's longing for the old country or Mom's quiet worries about money tight after the holidays. Downstairs, I heard murmurs, the soft thud of footsteps, the rustle of paper as they finished stuffing the log. "Is it too much?" Mom whispered once, her voice carrying up the stairs. "The kids, they'll think we're crazy." Dad's reply was muffled but firm, "That's the point, amor. Keeps the spirit alive. Makes us remember where we came from." Their words wrapped around me like the quilt itself, stirring something deep, a first inkling that this wasn't mere silliness, but a thread connecting our patchwork family across oceans and years. Brazilian warmth clashing with Catalan whimsy, American suburbia trying to hold it all. The log was the knot tying it together, rough and unyielding. Morning broke with fresh snow blanketing the yard, turning the world into a crisp postcard, but inside, the anticipation simmered like the coffee brewing in the pot. We gathered for breakfast, pancakes stacked high, syrup dripping sweet, and Dad finally unveiled it properly, carrying the log into the living room with ceremonial flair, placing it before the tree like an offering. My siblings' reactions mirrored mine from the day before, wide eyes, giggles bubbling up, confusion knitting brows. "It poops presents," my brother snorted, poking it experimentally, earning a playful swat from Mom. Laughter erupted, but beneath it, I saw the cultural clash unfolding in real time, this imported oddity jarring against the familiar carols on the radio, the store-bought cookies on the plate. Dad launched into the full backstory then, animated as ever, describing Kaga Tos roots in medieval firesides, where the log symbolized abundance from the earth, a defiant joy against winter's bite. He even pulled out a battered book of folklore, yellowed pages filled with illustrations of children beating sticks on wood, songs scribbled in faded ink. It was mesmerizing, that blend of history and home, making the log feel less like a joke and more like a bridge, from snowy Pyrenees to our sunny backyard barbecues, from whispered Spanish lullabies to Portuguese hymns sung off-key. Yet, as the day wore on toward evening, my initial confusion deepened into a quiet dilemma. Part of me thrilled at the secrecy, the way it made our Christmas stand out, a badge of our unique blend. But another part squirmed. What if friends came over tomorrow and saw the remnants, the scattered wrappers? What if it highlighted how we didn't quite fit, our traditions a mishmash that raised eyebrows at school? I watched Mom fuss over the log, adjusting the blanket with tender care, her face soft in the lamplight, and wondered if she felt it too, that tug between holding on to roots and planting new ones in foreign soil. Dad caught my eye across the room, nodding as if to say, "Trust the magic, kid." And in that moment, curiosity won out, pulling me closer to the blanket's edge, fingers itching to lift it just a peek. The log sat there, silent and smug, its painted grin promising hilarity and heartaches alike, hinting at the family chaos it would unleash come midnight. Little did I know, that discovery was just the spark. The real fire, the songs, the prods, the vulnerable laughs, was building, ready to ignite in ways that would bind us tighter than any ribbon-wrapped gift. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the room, I felt the pull stronger than ever, the eve of something unforgettable drawing near, where embarrassment would dance with joy, and our weird little log would reveal truths we'd carry forever. As the afternoon light faded into that soft, dusky blue that always signals the heart of winter evenings, our house transformed from a daytime flurry of wrapping paper and half-eaten treats into something more ritualistic, almost ceremonial. The log, now fully enshrined in the living room, took center stage on its blanket throne, the fire's glow casting flickering shadows that made its painted eyes seem to wink conspiratorially. Outside, the snow had picked up, swirling against the windows like curious ghosts peeking in, while inside, the air grew thicker with the aromas of impending feast, roasted chestnuts popping in the oven, the earthy spice of Dad's escudella bubbling away, and the faint, boozy undertone of cachaca being poured into mugs disguised as hot toddies for the grown-ups. I remember pacing the creaky floorboards, my bare feet padding softly over the worn rug, stealing glances at the log every few minutes, as if it might sprout legs and wander off before showtime. My siblings were in on it now, too, my brother inventing silly games like log tag, darting around it without touching, while my little sister had taken to whispering secrets to its wooden ear, convinced it could hear her wishes for a new doll. But the real magic, or madness depending on how you looked at it, began when the relatives started arriving, turning our cozy home into a babble of voices and embraces that bridged continents in a single crowded room. First came Tio Carlos and Tia Maria from the Brazilian side, shaking snow from their coats like wet dogs, their laughter booming before they'd even crossed the threshold. Tio Carlos, with his salt and pepper beard and stories that could stretch a simple fishing trip into an epic saga, clapped Dad on the back and immediately zeroed in on the log. "Ah, the famous Caga Tio. Last year you swore it ate my socks, don't let it poop them out tonight," he boomed, his Portuguese accent rolling like thunder, pulling a chuckle from everyone even as he eyed the thing warily. Tia Maria, ever the matriarch with her apron already tied and a Tupperware of brigadeiros tucked under her arm, those chocolatey Brazilian delights that melted on your tongue like forbidden joy, hugged me tight, her perfume a mix of jasmine and kitchen spices, whispering, "Don't worry, Mijo, it's all in fun. Traditions keep the family close, even if they're a bit peculiar." She busied herself in the kitchen, her hands a blur as she helped Mom layer the table with dishes, farofa crumbling golden beside slices of panettone, the Italian influence sneaking in from some distant cousin, and platters of codfish cakes that nodded to Portuguese roots. The room filled with their easy chatter, tales of Christmases past in Rio where fireworks lit the midnight sky and the ocean crashed like applause, so different from our snowbound setup, yet somehow the log became the great equalizer, a quirky focal point that invited everyone to share their own odd customs. Uncle Joao and Aunt Elena arrived next, fresh from a drive through the storm, their car crunching over the icy driveway like it was announcing royalty. Uncle Joao, Dad's brother from the Catalan line, carried a bottle of vermouth under his arm and a battered guitar slung over his shoulder, his face weathered like old leather from years in construction back in Barcelona before he settled stateside. "Mira, el tío," he exclaimed, striding over to the log with the reverence of a priest approaching an altar, though his grin betrayed the mischief. He ruffled my hair, his calloused hands rough but kind, and launched into a story about his own childhood, how they'd bundle up against the Pyrenees wind and beat the log harder than we ever would hear, songs echoing through stone villages where the air smelled of wood smoke and pine resin. Aunt Elena, quieter but no less vibrant, with her silver-streaked hair pinned back and eyes that sparkled like the ornaments on the tree, unpacked a small bundle of figs and nuts, traditional feed for the log, even if we weren't following the old rules to the letter. "It's about the spirit," she said softly, placing them near the blanket, her voice carrying that lilting Catalan cadence that made everything sound like poetry. As more family trickled in, cousins from both shores, a great-aunt via video call patched through on Dad's laptop, her face beaming from a sunny balcony in Sao Paulo, the living room swelled with bodies and noise, chairs pulled into a haphazard circle around the log, the fire roaring louder as if fueling the gathering. Dinner unfolded like a symphony of clinking silverware and overlapping voices, the long table in the dining room groaning under the weight of it all. We passed dishes hand to hand, the steam rising in fragrant clouds, Mom's turkey glazed with a Brazilian twist of guava jam, Dad's stew ladled into bowls with chunks of sausage that burst with flavor on the first bite. Laughter punctuated every story, Tio Carlos recounting how he'd once hidden fireworks in his log back home, nearly setting the Christmas tree ablaze, Uncle Joao demonstrating a ridiculous dance from his village festivals, his arms flailing like windmills while the kids dissolved into giggles. But as plates emptied and dessert made its rounds, flan wobbling in crystal dishes, brigadeiros rolling across saucers, the mood shifted, the anticipation thickening like fog. Eyes drifted back to the living room, where the log waited patiently, its blanket now embroidered with faint stains from past years, a patchwork history of spills and secrets. I felt that familiar squirm in my stomach, the dilemma creeping in like the chill from a drafty window. Here we were, a room full of people from worlds apart, united by blood and this absurd wooden relic, but was it worth the weirdness? The singing and prodding loomed, and part of me wanted to bolt upstairs, hide under the covers where traditions were just bedtime stories, not something you had to perform in front of everyone. Yet, the warmth of it all, the way Tia Maria squeezed my hand under the table, her silent encouragement, pulled me back, whispering that conformity to these quirks was the price of belonging, even if it meant swallowing pride with the last bite of flan. With bellies full and the clock edging toward 9, Dad stood, clapping his hands for attention, his mustache quivering with excitement. "It's time," he announced, and the room hushed, a collective breath held as we migrated back to the living room, the carpet muffling footsteps like conspirators. The log was uncovered fully now, propped on pillows to give it a regal air, its hollow end facing us like a challenge. Dad distributed the sticks, branches from the backyard pine, wrapped in ribbons to soften the blows, though no one was really beating it hard. This was our gentler American-Brazilian version, more coaxing than commanding. Uncle Joao tuned his guitar, the strings humming softly, and launched into the first song, a mangled blend of Catalan folk tune and Portuguese lullaby, his voice gravelly but earnest, Caga tio, amb el alegria dun poble. Poop, log, poop your gifts, for the joy of the season. The words tumbled out awkward in English for the monolingual cousins, but we joined in anyway, voices clashing like mismatched bells, my sister's high-pitched squeak, my brother's reluctant mumble, Tio Carlos belting it with operatic flair. We took turns prodding the log gently, sticks tapping its side with rhythmic thuds that echoed oddly in the room, each poke accompanied by chants of poop. Poop the presents. Laughter bubbled up immediately, the absurdity hitting like a wave. I could feel my face heating, that prickly embarrassment of shouting such nonsense at a piece of wood, especially with all these eyes on us, but it cracked through the tension, drawing even the shy great-aunt on the screen into chuckles. As the songs looped and layered, another verse in Spanish, a Brazilian rhythm clapping in from the back row, the nostalgia wrapped around us like the blanket once had. Uncle Joao paused mid-strum to share how his abuela would lead the ritual in a candlelit barn, the log crackling over the fire as gifts tumbled out, symbols of Earth's generosity in the lean winter months. Tia Maria chimed in with her own memory, how in her family, they'd have a pooping pot at New Year's, a clay version stuffed with fortunes, turning embarrassment into prophecy. The warmth of it seeped in, the fire's heat mingling with the glow of shared history, making the prods feel less silly and more sacred, a thread weaving our hybrid lives together. Yet, that light existential tug-of-war persisted in my chest. Why bend to this weirdness when normalcy felt safer? I poked the log tentatively, feeling its solid give under the stick, and for a split second, imagined ditching it all for a quiet movie night, no chance or chaos. But then Dad's eyes met mine, twinkling with that unspoken plea, join in, kid, this is us, and the dilemma softened, the comfort of family pulling stronger than the urge to hide. We sang louder now, sticks dancing in a chorus of taps, the room alive with motion, relatives leaning in, faces flushed and alive. The build-up stretched, the clock crawling past 10, the prodding evolving into a game where each tap revealed a teaser, Dad shaking the log subtly to make a rustle, pretending it was stirring within. Cousins took turns composing verses on the spot, poop out a bike for me, Tio, or I'll tickle you silly, one yelled, earning a roar, another aunt improvised in Portuguese, her words twisting the song into a samba beat that had Uncle Joao strumming faster. Amid the absurdity, nostalgic details surfaced like gifts themselves, the way the log's paint had chipped from last year, revealing layers of red from seasons past, the faint scent of varnish still clinging to its bark, a reminder of Dad's late-night labors. It was in these moments that the emotional undercurrent stirred, the warmth battling the weird, turning personal comfort into a quiet surrender. I found myself laughing genuinely now, the stick in my hand feeling less like a burden and more like a key, unlocking the joy hidden in our odd conformity. But as the chance peaked, the air electric with expectation, midnight loomed just beyond the next hour, promising the log's grand delivery, and with it, a frenzy of surprises, spills, and secrets that would crack open our family in ways no song could prepare for. The fire snapped, the snow hushed outside, and I wondered, heart racing, what chaos this ritual would unleash next, binding us in laughter or unraveling us just a little more. The clock on the mantel finally surrendered to the moment, its hands clicking past 11 with a deliberate tick that felt like the whole room held its breath, and then, as if on cue, Dad raised his arms like a conductor silencing an orchestra, the guitar strings fading into a hush broken only by the distant howl of wind against the eaves. It was nearing midnight now, that witching hour when Christmas Eve bled into the day itself, and the log, our steadfast, painted sentinel, sat there under the blanket's edge, its grin seeming wider in the firelight, as if it too was bracing for the chaos about to erupt. We'd been at it for what felt like hours, the songs looping in ever more inventive variations, sticks tapping out a Morse code of impatience, laughter layering over the embarrassment like frosting on a lopsided cake. My hands were sticky from the brigadeiros we'd passed around during a brief snack interlude, chocolate smears on my fingers making each prod feel messier, more real, and the room pulsed with that electric hum of a family teetering on the edge of something unpredictable. Tio Carlos had just finished a booming rendition of the song in Portuguese, twisting the lyrics to include a plea for pooping out a beach vacation, when Uncle João set down his guitar and nodded to Dad, time to let the magic, or the madness, happen. The relatives leaned in closer, chairs creaking under shifting weights, faces illuminated by the tree's twinkling lights that cast multicolored flecks across cheeks flushed from wine and warmth, and I felt my pulse quicken, that blend of thrill and terror knotting in my stomach like the ribbons on our makeshift sticks. Dad knelt before the log with a flourish, his knees popping audibly in the quiet, and with a dramatic pause that drew out the suspense, he reached into the hollow end, careful not to let anyone peek too soon, and began to extract the first gift. It was supposed to be controlled, a gentle coaxing where he'd pretend the log was rumbling from within, but in true family fashion, nothing ever went quite to plan. The first item out was a small, tissue-wrapped bundle meant for my little sister, but as Dad shook it free, the paper tore slightly, revealing a glimpse of the shiny plastic pony she'd been eyeing in catalogs for months. Her squeal pierced the air like a firework, eyes widening to saucers, but in her excitement, she lunged forward, knocking into the blanket and sending a cascade of loose wrappers tumbling out prematurely, onto the rug, under chairs, a colorful avalanche that scattered like confetti from a popped balloon. Laughter exploded immediately, but it was laced with that awkward edge, the kind where joy trips over mishap. My sister dove for her pony, giggling maniacally, while Tio Carlos hooted, "The log's pooping early, must be all that cachaca we fed it." The room dissolved into a frenzy, everyone scrambling to grab what they could, the ritual's careful choreography unraveling into a free-for-all that highlighted our family's glorious disarray. Amid the scramble, sibling rivalries flared like matches in dry grass. My older brother, ever the competitor, snatched a parcel that was clearly marked for me, a comic book he'd been borrowing ideas from all year, and held it aloft triumphantly, declaring, "Finders keepers, squirt." I felt that hot flash of injustice surge through me, the embarrassment of being outmaneuvered in front of the whole clan twisting into a shove that sent us both tumbling sideways, our sticks clattering to the floor. Mom's voice cut through, sharp but amused, "Boys, enough. The log decides, not you two gremlins." Yet her intervention only fueled the chaos, drawing chuckles from the aunts who remembered their own brotherly battles, stories bubbling up about Christmases in Brazil where fistfuls of sand replaced snow in holiday tussles. Uncle João, trying to restore order, grabbed the log itself to steady it, but in the shuffle, it tipped, disgorging a hidden note that fluttered out like a butterfly. Dad's handwriting scrawled across it, a silly poem about family farts and holiday hearts that had been meant as a private joke for Mom. The room went momentarily still as it landed at Tia Maria's feet, her eyes scanning the words before she burst into peals of laughter, reading it aloud in a theatrical voice that turned our private absurdity into shared spectacle. There it was, the turning point, embarrassment laid bare, not just in the pooping pretense but in these spilled secrets, forcing us to confront the vulnerabilities we'd tucked away like those gifts in the log's belly. As the notes and trinkets spilled forth in earnest now, a locket for Aunt Elena glinting in the firelight, a whoopee cushion that Dad squeezed with a fart like wheeze eliciting groans and guffaws, tiny figurines of saints mixed with superhero cards, the emotional connections began to weave through the mess like threads in a tapestry. My sister, pony clutched to her chest, sidled up to me amid the fray, her small hand slipping into mine, whispering, "See? Even if it's weird, it's ours," and in that touch, the rivalry with my brother softened, his sheepish grin as he handed back my comic a silent apology that words never quite captured. Tio Carlos found a faded photo tucked in one wrapper, an old snapshot of him and Dad as kids in Catalonia, arms slung around shoulders under a similar Yule log, and for a beat, the laughter quieted, his voice thickening as he passed it around. "Look at us, young and foolish, this tradition's kept us young at heart, hasn't it?" The relatives nodded, eyes misty, the chaos pausing as hands brushed in passing gifts, forging links across generations, Uncle Joao pressing a nut into my palm, a nod to the old ways, Tia Maria enveloping my brother in a hug that smelled of brigadeiros and home. It was in these fractured moments that the vulnerability shone brightest, embarrassment not as a barrier but a bridge, stripping away pretenses to reveal the raw love underneath, the kind that withstands spilled secrets and sibling squabbles alike. The log's delivery peaked in a whirlwind of motion, gifts flying like popcorn from a hot kettle, a bracelet for Mom that clattered against the hearth, drawing her to her knees in delighted surprise, a set of guitar picks for Uncle Joao that he caught mid-air with a whoop, even a prank snake in a can that Tia Maria popped open, sending springy coils across the rug and her scream turning to cackles that had us all doubled over. But beneath the hilarity, deeper turning stirred, as I unwrapped a small wooden carving Dad had made himself, a tiny log with my initials etched in. The realization hit that these weren't just toys or trinkets, they were fragments of us, vulnerabilities wrapped in whimsy. My brother's comic came with a note from him, admitting he'd been jealous of my storytelling, a confession that bridged our rivalry with unexpected tenderness, while my sister's pony hid a rolled-up drawing of our family gathered around the log, her childish lines capturing the exact chaos unfolding now. The embarrassment of the ritual, shouting "poop" at wood, scrambling like kids at a piñata, had cracked us open, allowing these emotional bonds to form, sticky and real, forging ties that felt unbreakable in their honesty. Even the adults weren't immune. Dad caught Mom's eye over a shared gift, a silly keychain from their honeymoon, and the look they exchanged spoke volumes, of years navigated, losses weathered, love preserved through such bizarre anchors. Yet, as the frenzy crested and then ebbed, leaving the floor a battlefield of torn paper and exhausted smiles, reflections on that shared embarrassment lingered like the smoke from the dying fire. How could something so mortifying, the prods, the spills, the sibling spats, strengthen us so? I sat back on the rug, legs splayed amid the debris, watching as Tio Carlos helped Aunt Elena clasp her locket, their whispers a mix of Catalan and English, and felt it, vulnerability as the true gift, turning awkward awakenings into foundations. The clock struck midnight properly now, chimes mingling with residual giggles, and the log lay emptied, its grin faded but satisfied, a witness to how we'd let go, laughed through the mess, and emerged closer, hearts entangled in the web of our own making. But in the quiet that followed, as hugs circled and the first carols of Christmas Day hummed softly from the radio, a subtle tension simmered beneath the joy, hidden frictions from the night's revelations, losses hinted at in those old photos and notes, pulling at the edges of our bonds like threads ready to unravel. Little did we know, the laughter was just the surface, the real depths, the aches and anchors of family, were only beginning to surface in the calm after the storm, drawing us into reflections that would echo long beyond the holiday glow. The fire had dwindled to a bed of glowing embers by the time the last gift wrapper fluttered to the floor, the living room a glorious wreck of crumpled tissue and scattered ribbons that looked like the aftermath of a confetti storm gone wild. We sprawled out in various states of exhaustion and elation, my sister curled up with her pony clutched tight, her eyelids drooping as she mumbled something about log magic, my brother and I shoulder to shoulder on the rug, flipping through the comic that now felt like a shared trophy rather than a point of contention, the adults nursing mugs of mulled wine, their faces softened by the tree's lingering lights that twinkled like distant stars. Laughter still bubbled up in sporadic fits, triggered by the whoopee cushion's occasional deflation under someone's knee or Tio Carlos reenacting the snake-in-a-can prank with exaggerated flails that had Tia Maria swatting at him playfully with a napkin. That log's got a mind of its own, Uncle Joao chuckled, wiping tears from his eyes as he surveyed the mess, his guitar prop forgotten against the couch. Spilled more than just gifts tonight, it's like it knew we needed a good shake-up. The air hung heavy with that post-frenzy glow, the kind where everything feels lighter, vulnerabilities aired out like laundry on a sunny line, but even in the warmth, I caught those fleeting shadows crossing faces, the way Mom's smile faltered when she tucked the honeymoon keychain into her pocket, or how Dad's laugh trailed off as he stared at the emptied log, its painted grin now smudged with chocolate fingerprints. It started innocently enough, the humor uncoiling like a spring in the quiet lulls, as we began the cleanup that no one really wanted to tackle just yet. Cousin Sophia, who'd been quiet during the scramble, unearthed a gift gone wrong from under the tree skirt, a small box meant for her that had tumbled free during the chaos, its lid popped open to reveal not the earrings she'd hoped for, but a jumble of mismatched socks, one with a hole big enough to swallow a toe. The log's playing favorites, she wailed dramatically, holding them aloft like evidence in a trial, but her mock outrage dissolved into giggles when Tio Carlos confessed he'd stuffed them in as a practical joke on Dad, who was notorious for losing his pairs every holiday. The room erupted again, Dad feigning offense by tossing a balled-up wrapper at his brother, which ricocheted off the log and bonked Aunt Elena on the head, drawing her into the fray with a yelp that turned into a story about the year in Barcelona when a similar mishap led to the whole family chasing a runaway gift pig, some Catalan twist on the log involving a clay figurine that pooped even Messier surprises. These tales wove through the night like threads in a quilt, patching the hilarity over the cracks, but as the laughter peaked and ebbed, deeper nostalgic accounts began to surface, pulled out like those hidden gifts that had lingered too long in the wood's belly. Tia Maria, ever the keeper of memories, settled into an armchair with a sigh, her brigadeiro plate balanced on her lap, and launched into a reminiscence of Christmases in her childhood village near Sao Paulo, where the pooping tradition wasn't a log but a communal pot at the New Year's feast, stuffed with handwritten fortunes that foretold the year ahead. One year, she said, her voice dropping to that storytelling timbre that made the fire seem to hush, it predicted my sister's marriage to a fisherman, and sure enough, she wed him the next summer, reeled us all into a life of salt and sun. We leaned in, the mess forgotten for a moment, as she described the absurdity. Families gathered in the town square under a canopy of stars, prodding the pot with spoons while singing bawdy tunes, laughter masking the undercurrents of hardship, the droughts that parched the fields, the migrations that scattered kin like seeds in the wind. Uncle Joao nodded, adding his layer from the Catalan side, how the Tio in his abuela's home had once pooped a locket with a photo of a lost uncle, gone to the war, turning joy into a quiet ache that the family carried through songs and strikes of the stick. These stories, laced with mishaps like the time a gift horse figurine broke mid-unwrap, releasing a shower of glitter that stuck to everything for weeks, blended the funny with the poignant, reminding us how our own frenzy echoed those turbulent times, the log's chaos a counterpoint to life's unscripted spills. But as the clock crept past 1, with yawns stretching longer than the shadows on the walls, the hidden tensions began to peek through the humor like cracks in a thawing ice. I noticed it first in Dad, who had wandered to the window, gazing out at the snow blanketing the yard in silent white, his reflection superimposed over the night like a ghost of holidays past. The old photo Tio Carlos had found, him and his brother as boys, arms around the log in some distant Pyrenees cabin, sat on the mantel now, drawing eyes and soft touches, but Dad's fingers lingered too long on its frame, tracing the faded edges. "We lost that cabin in '78, he murmured when Mom joined him, her hand on his shoulder. Floods took it after the big storm, everything we built, washed away." The room stilled, the laughter's echo fading into an uncomfortable hush, because no one had spoken of that loss in years, the way it uprooted the family, forcing Dad across oceans to start over in a land of strip malls and English carols. It was a dilemma we'd all felt in subtler ways, the pull of change against the anchor of tradition, how this pooping log, silly as it was, stood as a defiant holdout against the eroding tides of time, distance, and the quiet griefs that holidays amplify. Mom steered us back with her gentle pragmatism, suggesting we sort the gifts into piles by recipient, turning the task into another game where mishaps fueled fresh laughs, a mislabeled bracelet ending up on Tio Carlos's wrist, too tiny and sparkly, prompting him to strut like a peacock while Tia Maria snapped photos on her flip phone. Yet, even in the levity, the undercurrent swirled. Cousin Sophia, unwrapping a scarf from Aunt Elena, paused to ask about her own absent father, who'd skipped another Christmas for work in the city, the gift a stand-in that couldn't fill the void. "Traditions like this, they hold us when pieces are missing," Aunt Elena replied softly, her eyes meeting Sophia's with that knowing look of one who's weathered similar storms, the locket around her neck, a recent widowhood veiled in quiet strength, gleaming like a talisman. These subtle frictions, uncovered in the ritual's wake, provoked a stirring in me, a child's dawning awareness of how laughter could paper over losses, the log's emptied belly mirroring the hollows we carried inside. Why cling to these anchors in turbulent times? I wondered, watching my brother help Dad stack the wrappers, their banter light but laced with an old rhythm that spoke of shared labors through tougher years, the job Dad lost before I was born, the moves that uprooted our Brazilian ties. The night deepened, the relatives starting to filter out in 2s and 3s, coats zipped against the cold, hugs lingering a beat longer than usual, as if the log's frenzy had unearthed emotions they'd packed away like winter clothes. Tio Carlos clapped me on the back, whispering, "Keep whacking that log, kid, it'll poop out strength when you need it," his words half joke, half prophecy, before piling into the car with Tia Maria, their taillights fading into the snowy dark. Uncle Joao strummed a final, sleepy chord on his guitar, a melody that blended loss into lullaby, while Aunt Elena gathered the figs and nuts, remnants of the old ways, promising to plant them come spring as a nod to renewal. Inside, the house felt both fuller and emptier, the laughter's residue warming the air but the tensions humming like the last embers crackle. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance over the cleaned rug, mostly clean, anyway, with a few stragglers swept under the couch, and she squeezed his hand, the keychain dangling from her pocket like a charm against change. It was in these afterglow moments that the dilemmas crystallized for me: family as a rickety boat in life's storms, traditions like the log as the mast holding us steady, absorbing the hits of mishaps and memories alike. As we kids were herded toward baths and beds, the humor resurfaced one last time, my sister insisting her pony needed its own blanket to poop dreams, which sent my brother into a fit of snorts that echoed down the hall. But tucked under my covers later, the window frosting with my breath, those hidden depths replayed, the photo's lost cabin, Sophia's quiet question, Dad's distant stare. The log, now stored back in the garage with its secrets gathered but not gone, had done more than deliver gifts. It had stirred the pot of our past, provoking thoughts on how we navigate loss, how change tests the bonds we forge in laughter's fire. Yet, beneath the tensions, there was a resilient warmth, a reminder that these anchors, bizarre, imperfect, keep us afloat when the waters rise. Sleep tugged at me, but not before a final chuckle escaped at the night's absurdities, the way it all tangled humor with heartache. Still, as the house settled into snores and silence, a quieter pull lingered, drawing me toward the emotional core waiting in the morning light, a heartfelt revelation that would peel back the last layers, revealing the log's true symbolism in a moment just for us, where philosophy and family intertwined like the roots of that old oak. Morning light filtered through the frosted windows like a gentle hand stirring us from the night's whirlwind, the snow outside transformed into a pristine blanket that muffled the world beyond our walls, turning the house into a cocoon of hushed aftermath. I woke to the scent of coffee brewing downstairs, mingled with the faint, lingering sweetness of brigadeiros and the woody echo of the log's varnish, my body heavy with that delicious exhaustion only a late Christmas Eve can deliver. Slipping out of bed, my bare feet met the cold floorboards, and I padded down the stairs in my pajamas, drawn by the low murmur of voices from the kitchen, Mom and Dad already up, their words soft and unhurried, the kind of conversation that feels sacred in the quiet dawn of a holiday. The living room was still a testament to the frenzy, stray ribbons curled like forgotten party streamers on the rug, the emptied log propped in the corner by the tree, its painted face now softened by the morning glow, looking less mischievous and more weary, as if it too had spent the night reflecting on the secrets it had spilled. My siblings were still asleep, the house holding its breath in that fragile interlude before the day fully unfolded, and I hovered at the kitchen door, invisible in the steam rising from the stove, listening as Dad's voice rumbled low, laced with a vulnerability he rarely showed in the broad light. "It's funny, isn't it?" he was saying, the clink of mugs punctuating his words as he stirred sugar into his coffee, the spoon scraping against ceramic like a reluctant confession. "That old chunk of wood brings it all back. The cabin, the floods, even the good bits, like Abuela's songs echoing through the snow." Mom's reply was a soft hum of agreement, her chair scraping as she rose to refill his cup, her hand brushing his shoulder in that absent, intimate way that spoke of years woven together. "And the kids," she added, her voice warm but threaded with something deeper, "they don't know how much we've poured into keeping this alive. The pooping, the laughs, it's our way of saying we're still here, still us, no matter what." I leaned against the doorframe, heart swelling with that unexpected ache, the scene unfolding like a private ritual all its own, no sticks or songs required, just the raw honesty of two people who'd navigated storms to plant this quirky seed in foreign soil. Stepping in quietly, I poured myself a glass of orange juice, the pulp settling at the bottom like unspoken thoughts, and they turned to me with smiles that crinkled the corners of their eyes, pulling up a stool for me without a word, inviting me into this quiet turning point where the log's symbolism began to crystallize, not in chaos, but in the calm that followed. We sat there as the sun climbed higher, casting golden pools across the table cluttered with last night's remnants, a half-eaten panettone, the old photo from the mantel propped against a vase, Dad and Tio Carlos as boys, their faces innocent under that long-lost Catalan sky. Dad picked it up again, his thumb tracing the edges worn smooth by time, and began to share more than he ever had before, his stories unfolding like the gifts from the night prior, each one a layer peeled back to reveal the heart beneath. "You know, mi hijo," he said, his accent thickening with emotion, "this tradition started as a child's game, but it became something more after the floods. Abuela would say the Tio wasn't just for sweets, it was for remembering. In the hard years, when the river took our home and scattered the family like leaves, we'd gather around it anyway, whacking away the sorrows, coaxing out hope one tap at a time." Mom nodded, her eyes distant as she recalled her own side, the Brazilian Christmases where warmth came not from fire but from crowded tables under summer stars, yet loss had crept in too, the grandparents gone too soon, the miles that stretched family ties thin. "We brought the log here to bridge it all," she said softly, "the cold and the heat, the old world and this one. It's silly on the surface, but underneath, it's about innocence, holding on to that wonder before time chips it away. The words hung in the air, philosophical musings wrapping around us like the steam from our drinks, stirring in me a reflection I'd only glimpsed as a kid, that the log, with its absurd pooping pretense, was a vessel for preserving love in the face of passage. I thought of how the night had stripped us bare, the spilled secrets, the sibling pushes, the laughter that masked quiet griefs, all forcing us to confront the fleeting nature of it all. But why the poop part? I asked, my voice small in the morning hush, half joking to lighten the weight, yet genuinely curious. Dad chuckled, that deep rumble breaking the tension, but his eyes held steady. Because life isn't tidy, son. It's messy, undignified sometimes, the losses, the changes, the embarrassing moments that make us human. The TO teaches that, you prod at the rough edges, embrace the ridiculous, and out comes the good stuff. Not perfectly wrapped, but real. Mom reached across the table, covering my hand with hers, her touch warm and grounding, and in that simple gesture, the emotional core of our family pulsed alive, the way these bizarre memories acted as glue, strengthening connections across generations, turning potential fractures into forged steel. As we lingered there, the conversation deepened, weaving through the innocence of childhood Christmases past, Dad recounting how he'd first seen the TO as a boy, sneaking treats to it under the blanket, believing it truly alive with winter magic, Mom sharing tales of her village feasts where pooping pots weren't just fun but talismans against scarcity, each fortune spat out a promise of better days. I added my own fragments, the confusion of that first discovery in the garage, the hot flush of embarrassment during the songs, yet how each year the log pulled me closer to them, to us. It was a private moment, unscripted and profound, the three of us orbiting this wooden symbol like planets around a sun, philosophizing on time's relentless march, how the floods had washed away physical anchors, but rituals like this rebuilt them in the heart, preserving the wide-eyed wonder before adulthood's pragmatism dulled it. Look at you now, Mom said, squeezing my hand again, questioning it all, but still here, still part of the madness. That's the real gift, the memories that outlast the wood. Dad nodded, setting the photo down, his face etched with lines that told of joys and sorrows alike, and I felt it fully then, the log's deeper symbolism emerging from the night's debris, not just a prop for laughs, but a guardian of love's quirky endurance, bridging the gaps time tries to carve. The sun shifted, warming the room as my siblings' footsteps pattered down the stairs, breaking the intimacy with their sleepy demands for breakfast and questions about leftover gifts, but the revelation lingered like an afterimage, coloring the day with newfound depth. We moved to the living room, the log still sentinel in the corner, and as we picked up the last stragglers, a forgotten nut rolling under the couch, a ribbon tangled in the tree branches, I caught Dad pausing to pat its side gently, a silent thanks to the tradition that had carried them through. Mom orchestrated pancakes at the table, flipping them golden while humming a mangled version of the TO song, drawing laughs from my brother and sister who reenacted bits of the midnight scramble with dramatic flair, pony and comic as props. Yet, in the bustle, that quiet turning point echoed, the philosophical undercurrents on innocence lost and reclaimed, the passage of time marked not by calendars but by the chipping paint on a wooden face, the bizarre memories that wove love into an unbreakable tapestry. Uncle Joao called later, his voice crackling over the line from his snowed-in drive home, sharing how the photo had stirred him too, prompting a promise to visit the old village sites come summer, a thread strengthened across oceans, generations linked by this improbable anchor. Lunch unfolded lazily, the relatives filtering back in twos for leftovers and stories, but the morning's intimacy had shifted something subtle, a deeper current running beneath the renewed chatter. Tia Maria noticed it first, hugging me tighter than usual, whispering, the log worked its magic again, eh? Pooped out some wisdom this time. We laughed, but her words rang true, provoking in me a maturing reflection on how these rituals, absurd, vulnerable, preserve the essence of family, turning the passage of time from a thief into a storyteller, innocence not shattered but reshaped through shared weirdness. As afternoon waned, with snow melting into drips from the eaves and the tree lights flickering on early against the gathering dusk, Dad gathered us around the log one last time that day, not for prods or songs, but for a quiet toast with mugs of hot cocoa, his voice steady as he raised his, to the TO, and to us, may it keep pooping joy, no matter the years. Glasses clinked, eyes met in that web of connections, love fortified by the night's revelations, the emotional core bared and beautiful in its imperfection. Yet, as evening crept in, casting long shadows that danced with the fire's rekindling flames, the day's calm held a lingering pull, whispers of the log's echoes yet to fully resolve, the way adulthood would test these bonds, contrasting the magic with harsher realities, drawing me into reflections that would revisit this strangest night through a grown-up lens, where nostalgia's warmth battled time's chill, promising deeper insights still to come. Years have a way of slipping through your fingers like the snow that melted away that Christmas morning, leaving behind only the faint chill of what once was, and before I knew it, that pooping log, our absurd family talisman, had become a relic of childhood tucked into the recesses of memory, dusted off only in quiet moments when the holidays rolled around again. I remember the first time adulthood truly tested its hold on me. It was a few seasons later, when I'd moved out for college, the house feeling smaller on those rare visits home, the living room echoing with the ghost of sibling squabbles and spilled secrets. The world outside had sharpened, deadlines, part-time jobs at coffee shops where the scent of espresso drowned out pine needles, friends trading stories of glossy Hallmark holidays that made our ritual sound like a fever dream. Yet, as December crept in, I'd find myself driving back through familiar streets dusted with fresh flurries, the radio humming carols that pulled at those old threads, and stepping through the door, the air would hit me first, that unmistakable blend of cinnamon-spiced air and the faint, earthy whiff of varnish from the garage, where the log waited, chipped and faithful, its painted grin a little more faded but no less knowing. Mom would hug me tight, her embrace carrying the weight of years unspoken, while Dad clapped my shoulder with a boisterous, "Back for the T.O., eh?" His mustache graying at the edges now, but the twinkle in his eye unchanged, drawing me right back into the warmth that the world's colder edges had tried to erode. That first adult Christmas, the contrast hit like a sudden gust through an open window, the house still cozy, but now laced with the subtle shifts of time. My little sister, once pony-clutching and wide-eyed, now a teenager with earbuds dangling and eye rolls at the lame old traditions, my brother off at his own apartment, his visits sporadic, marked by quick hellos and quicker exits, the relatives thinner in number, some faces missing from the table like gaps in a favorite song. We'd gather anyway, the log hauled out with less fanfare, but the ritual unfolded much the same, Uncle Joao's guitar creaking under his arthritic fingers, Tio Carlos booming his beach vacation pleas in Portuguese, the sticks passed around though my hands felt clumsier now, heavier with the awareness of what the prods truly meant. The midnight frenzy felt both familiar and foreign, the laughter spilling out as gifts tumbled, a whoopee cushion still eliciting groans, but now laced with an undercurrent of self-consciousness, me wondering if my college friends would believe this tale over eggnog, or if it marked me as forever the kid from the weird family. Yet, in the chaos, nostalgic details resurfaced like buried treasures, the way the fire's crackle synced with Dad's rumbling laugh, the sticky sweetness of Tia Maria's brigadeiros melting on my tongue, the blanket's frayed edges brushing my knee as we poked and chanted, evoking that same electric hum of vulnerability that had bound us as children. It was in these sensory echoes, the rough bark under tentative taps, the mingled accents weaving through songs, that the memory's impact lingered, a quiet insistence that this strangeness wasn't just survival, but sustenance, nourishing bonds across the growing distances of adult life. As the years piled on, those echoes grew into a soundtrack of their own, playing faintly during my own holidays far from home, Thanksgivings in cramped dorms with microwave turkey, New Year's in city bars where the cheers drowned out introspection, moments when the pooping log felt like a distant myth, something I'd tell with a chuckle at parties to explain my quirky upbringing. But then came the calls home, Dad's voice crackling over the line with updates, how the log had pooped a new grandniece's first toy that year, or the time a storm knocked out the power mid-ritual, forcing them to chant by flashlight, laughter echoing louder in the dark. Each story pulled me back, stirring a pang that wasn't just nostalgia, but a deeper provocation. Had I drifted too far from the imperfection that made us whole? I recall one particularly stark contrast, a few years into my 20s, when I skipped Christmas altogether for a work trip to a sun-soaked conference in California, palms swaying where snow should have been, the hotel lobby decked in sterile garlands that lacked the handmade chaos of our tree. Alone in my room that eve, scrolling through family photos sent via grainy texts, the log mid-delivery, faces blurred but joyful, I felt the chill of isolation settle in, not from weather but from the void of those shared absurdities. The next morning, I booked a red-eye flight home, arriving disheveled to the tail end of breakfast, where Mom enveloped me in a hug that smelled of escudella and relief, Dad thrusting a cold coffee into my hand with a grin, the Tio missed you, pooped an extra gift just in case. That reunion, messy and unpolished, reignited the warmth, reminding me how embracing the imperfect in celebrations, the spills, the awkward chants, deepens the relational threads, turning fleeting visits into lifelines that withstand the pull of separate lives. Time marched on relentlessly, carving deeper grooves into the family fabric. Uncle Joao's guitar silenced forever when illness took him, his absence a hollow note in the songs that first Christmas without him, the log seeming heavier in Dad's hands as he distributed the sticks alone. Tio Carlos moved back to Brazil for his retirement, his booming tales reduced to video calls that glitched mid-story, the screen freezing on his beard as he described pooping beaches instead of logs. My siblings scattered too, brother to a job across the state, sister to college dorms buzzing with her own newfound independence, leaving the gathering smaller, the table echoing with empty chairs, yet the ritual persisted, a stubborn heartbeat against the fading. I'd return when I could, the drive now longer with my own apartment and budding career, but stepping in, the sensory nostalgia enveloped me like an old coat, the pine's sharp tang cutting through the airport's stale air, the crunch of snow under tires echoing childhood footsteps, the fire's pop syncing with Dad's tales, now laced with more gravel in his voice. One year, amid my own contrasts, a sleek office party with champagne flutes and small talk that felt as hollow as tinsel, I cut out early, racing home to find them mid-prods, the log's grin welcoming me back into the fray, gifts spilling with renewed frenzy, my late arrival sparking laughs about the prodigal son who'd nearly missed the poop. In those moments, the provocation deepened. Why chase perfection in polished celebrations when the quirky, the vulnerable, fosters bonds that time can't fray? The log, chipped further now, its paint peeling like old skin, became a mirror to our evolution, imperfect, enduring, coaxing out not just trinkets but truths about holding on. Adulthood brought its own turning points, echoes of that strangest night rippling into relationships beyond blood, my first serious romance, where I hesitantly shared the Tio story over holiday wine, her laughter tentative at first, then genuine, drawing her into our fold the next year with wide-eyed wonder at the chance, her hand in mine during the scramble forging a new layer to the web. Breakups tested it too, those lonely eves staring at city lights from high-rises, the log's memory a balm against the ache, whispering that vulnerability, embarrassing as it was, builds resilience, much like prodding would to yield its treasures. And with Dad's health waning in his later years, the echoes grew poignant, visits home now laced with quiet urgencies, helping him sand a fresh log for the grandkids, my hands calloused from desk work but learning the grain under his guidance, the garage filled with his stories of floods and floods of memories. One final Christmas, frail but fierce, he insisted on the full ritual, his voice weak but insistent as he shook the log, pooping out a carved figurine for each of us, symbols of the paths we'd taken, his eyes meeting mine with that old twinkle, provoking a flood of reflection on how these bizarre anchors deepen bonds, embracing imperfection as the true path to intimacy. After he passed, the log sat unused that year, the house too quiet, grief a heavy blanket, but we gathered anyway, sticks in hand, tapping gently to honor him, tears mixing with laughter as stories flowed, the ritual transforming loss into legacy, relational ties knitting tighter in the face of absence. Now, in these middle years, with my own family branching out, nieces and nephews wide-eyed at the painted face, their giggles a fresh echo of mine from decades ago, the strangest night's impact resonates clearest, a compass through modern holidays cluttered with streaming specials and scheduled cheer. Contrasts abound, Zoom calls with distant kin replacing crowded rooms, eco-friendly wraps subbing for tissue chaos, yet I haul out the log each eve, its wood warmer from layers of handling, insisting on the prods and songs to cut through the gloss, evoking sensory nostalgia that grounds us, the bark's texture evoking Dad's hands, the chants carrying Uncle Joao's melody, the spills reminding us joy thrives in mess. It provokes still, this embrace of imperfection, in a world rushing toward curated perfection, why not lean into the weird, the vulnerable, to deepen those bonds that matter? Last Christmas, as the grandkids scrambled and my sister and I exchanged glances over the frenzy, her now a mother herself, gray threading her hair, we felt it, the full arc of those echoes, the log not just a tradition but a living thread, weaving generations in laughter's imperfect weave. The fire crackled on, snow tapping the panes like impatient fingers, and as the night wound down, the emptied log grinned in the corner, promising that these quirky rituals endure, turning ordinary eves into tapestries of heart-deep connection. But even as we cleared the debris, a final whisper lingered from that original chaos, the way one bizarre night could redefine belonging, urging me to wonder what new imperfections await in the holidays ahead, ready to bind us closer still, heart to heart, through every unexpected turn. And so, here we are, at the quiet end of it all, the fire's last embers glowing faint in the hearth like a reluctant goodbye, the snow outside settling into that deep, undisturbed hush that wraps the world in its own kind of peace. That pooping log, rough-hewn, absurd, painted with a grin that outlasted floods and farewells, sits now in the corner of memory, its hollow belly long emptied, but its echoes still rumbling through the years, stirring up questions that don't fade with the wrapping paper or the melted snow. Think about it for a moment. What is it about these quirky rituals, these bizarre threads we weave into the fabric of our holidays, that they cling to us so fiercely? In our family's case, it wasn't the gifts tumbling out in chaotic bursts or the laughter that bordered on hysteria, it was the way that wooden relic forced us to confront the messiness of who we are, vulnerability spilling forth like those hidden trinkets, turning embarrassment into something sacred, a bridge across the gaps time tries to carve. And isn't that the heart of Christmas, or any gathering that truly matters? Not the perfection of a Hallmark scene, all twinkling lights and seamless joy, but the raw, unpolished humanity that binds us, reminding us that love thrives in the cracks, the awkward pauses, the moments we might otherwise sweep under the rug. Reflect on your own holidays, those Christmases that flicker in your mind like old home movies, fuzzy at the edges, but sharp where it counts. Maybe yours didn't involve a chanting circle around a piece of oak, urging it to do its business, but I bet there's something odd, something uniquely yours, tucked away in the nostalgia. Perhaps it's the annual burnt turkey that your uncle insists on carving anyway, his jokes masking the quiet pride of years at the stove, or the mismatched ornaments on the tree, each one a story of a child long grown, a loss endured, a love reclaimed. These aren't just traditions, they're lifelines, quirky legacies that transform the ordinary ache of time into something enduring, something we pass down not because it's polished or profound on paper, but because it carries the weight of our shared vulnerability. In our house, the log became that, a symbol of resilience, born from Dad's tales of Catalan winters and Mom's Brazilian warmth, a defiant nod to roots that refuse to wither in foreign soil. It taught me, early on, that joy isn't found in hiding the unglamorous parts, the sibling shoves, the spilled secrets, the hot flush of embarrassment when you're shouting nonsense at a log in front of relatives who flew across oceans. No, joy blooms precisely there, in the willingness to lean into the weird, to let the mess unfold and laugh through it, forging bonds that no distance or decade can snap. But let's dig a little deeper, because this isn't just a fond reminiscence, it's a provocation, a gentle nudge to pause amid your own holiday rush and ask, what legacies are you leaving, or perhaps neglecting, in the glow of your own lights? That log, with its ridiculous premise, peeled back layers we didn't even know were there, the undercurrents of loss in Dad's distant stare at old photos, the subtle tensions of change as family members drifted or departed, the quiet strength in Mom's hand squeezing mine during those morning confessions. It showed us that vulnerability isn't a weakness to avoid, it's the very soil where family values take root, where the lessons of endurance and empathy grow wild and real. Think of the times you've felt that pull yourself, the hesitation before joining a family game that feels too silly for adult dignity, or the lump in your throat when a long-held custom stirs memories of someone gone. In embracing those, we honor not just the past, but the living present, the way a shared laugh over a mishap can mend a rift, or how reviving an old quirk can invite a newcomer into the circle, expanding the heart of the home. Our log did that year after year, turning potential fractures, cultural clashes, generational gaps, the relentless march of time, into woven strengths, a tapestry of love that withstood floods, moves, and farewells. Now, imagine carrying that forward, transforming your own quirky customs into meaningful anchors for the ones who come after. You don't need a painted log or imported folklore, start small, with what's already whispering in your family's lore. That embarrassing story your grandmother tells every year about the time the cat knocked over the tree, lean into it, make it the centerpiece of a toast, let the laughter ripple and draw out the deeper truths it holds, like her unyielding spirit through harder days. Or if your holidays feel too polished, too scripted by calendars and catalogs, dare to revive something odd, something vulnerable, a midnight walk under the stars sharing secrets, no matter how silly, a pooping pot of your own, stuffed with notes of gratitude or silly predictions, coaxing out not just smiles but admissions of love long unspoken. These acts aren't about spectacle, they're about invitation, pulling people closer through the imperfections, teaching that joy in vulnerability is the truest gift, the one that echoes beyond the season. I've seen it in my own life, long after the log's last prod, in quiet dinners with my grown siblings, where we invoke its memory to cut through the weight of our separate worlds, rebuilding bridges with a chuckle and a shared eye roll, in introducing it to my own kids, their wide-eyed giggles mirroring mine from decades ago, planting seeds of resilience that will outlast me. And here's the real provocation, the one that lingers like the scent of pine long after the tree's gone. What if we stopped chasing the flawless Christmas, the one free of awkward silences or cultural fumbles, and instead chase the kind that scars you with joy, the kind that leaves you marked by laughter's edge, by the beauty of bonds forged in the fire of the unglamorous? In a world that peddles perfection through screens and storefronts, where holidays can feel like performances rather than pauses, embracing the quirky, the vulnerable, becomes an act of rebellion, a quiet revolution that reclaims the season for the heart. It links us back to the essence of what Christmas stirs, not just celebration, but reflection on our shared fragility, the family values that weather storms because they're built on honesty, not illusion. Our log, in its absurdity, revealed that, the way embarrassment cracked us open to love's deeper flow, how its deliveries mirrored life's own unpredictable spills, turning loss into legacy, change into chapter. So, as you sit there now, perhaps with a mug warming your hands or the faint hum of holiday lights in your periphery, I encourage you, reflect on this. What odd tradition in your life deserves a revival, a fresh prod to coax out its hidden gifts? Share it with someone tonight, over cocoa or a late walk. Revive it at your next gathering, no matter how small or scattered the circle. Create new ones too. Start a ritual of whispered wishes under the mistletoe, or a family spill the beans game where vulnerabilities tumble out like those wrappers from the log, met with open arms instead of judgment. These actions aren't grand gestures, they're the quiet revolutions that enrich your Christmases, transforming them from fleeting cheer into enduring stories, lessons in joy that vulnerability unlocks. Imagine the ripple, your kids carrying forward that silly pod or walk, telling it with the same warmth, the same depth, binding generations in the glorious mess of being human. It's in these legacies that we find the true magic, not in the wood or the chants, but in the hearts they touch, urging us to live more fully, love more boldly, through every imperfect, unforgettable beat. In the end, that strangest night with the pooping log wasn't about the absurdity at all, it was about us, choosing to gather, to laugh through the leaks, to hold on when the world pulls apart. Let it provoke you to do the same. Weave your quirks into legacies, embrace the vulnerability that makes joy real, and step into this season, or the next, with open hands, ready for whatever poops out next. Because in that readiness, in the reflective pause and the brave action, you'll discover the deepest bonds, the ones that make every Christmas, every memory, a testament to love's enduring, quirky grace. And trust me, it's worth every awkward,